Hey, what's up, everybody? This is your boys, Josh and Peyton from the Everything College Basketball brand. And breaking news today, as we sat here on January 5th, 2023, it came out about an hour ago Eastern Standard Time. It is 4:08 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And at about 3 o'clock, it was breaking news that the University of Texas has parted ways with head coach Chris Beard. As you all are probably aware by now, that Chris Beard about a month ago was involved in some bad stuff related to domestic violence with his fiance. If you're not aware of the story, in short form, essentially Chris Beard late at night one night, December 12th, at his residence in Texas. Apparently there was some drinks and alcohol involved. There was a domestic violence call, and the police came out, arrested Chris Beard, and he's been suspended from the University of Texas since December 12th, pending investigation. Well, today, like I mentioned about an hour ago, the University of Texas has announced that they have parted ways with Chris Beard, the head coach of the Longhorns. And we're here to real quick just kind of talk about it, break down what exactly is going on, our thoughts on it, and potential replacements, which I don't think there's going to be one, obviously, in the immediate future, but we're talking about next year and beyond. Peyton, just real quick thoughts before we really dive into this scenario. Ugly situation. We know Chris Beard has been one of the best head coaches in college basketball over the last, 5, 6, 7 years, and even before then as his time with Texas Tech under Bobby Knight as an assistant coach. Very good. As far as a basketball mind, Chris Beard has been one of the top coaches in college basketball for a long time. But an ugly end to basically a career ender for him.
Yeah, I can't see him coming back from this. It's a tough situation. You hate to see it. Chris Beard is one of the best coaches in college basketball right now. And hell, he was one of your favorite coaches coming out. Ever since we started doing this podcast, Josh was talking so highly of Chris Beard, and that if the Kentucky job ever opened up, Chris Beard was always his number one option. Well, unfortunately, that number one option is no more because now he's fired and now his career is potentially probably over. Still never know. He could come back, but it's going to take 5 or 10 years for him to be able to come back. He's still young, so he could do it. But it's a tough situation. We talked about on the podcast as it happened. As the news started to break out more, we started finding more information about it. And it came out, 2 weeks ago when we was talking about it before Texas played Oklahoma, how there's a potential chance that he could be reinstated because his wife said that he acted in self-defense and stuff like that. So we thought he might be reinstated. Actually, matter of fact, me and Corey was talking about it. Yeah. I said, when does Chris Beard get reinstated? Is it going to be the Texas-Oklahoma game? And, well, Corey, I guess, our answer's finally been answered because now it's never. Now he's gone.
Yeah, and just to correct you, fiance, they have not got married, but still the same situation. Again, it's an ugly situation, and we're seeing it right now in the UFC with the president, Dana White. He said it best himself years ago with the Ray Rice Baltimore Ravens situation. You just don't come back from hitting women. And I understand the alcohol may be involved, and you don't want to speculate, and we're not trying to get into too deep into the drama and the weeds here. But regardless, it's pretty easy to keep your hands to yourself. Don't touch women. Again, all this, like you mentioned, the fiance did come out a couple weeks ago and try to say that he never touched her. We're not going to spend time on that. We're here to talk about the firing of Chris Beard, but it's a very ugly end to a very promising head coach that had the entire world at his feet. You look at Chris Beard's stats here. He is 171 and 73 overall in his head coaching career, dating back to Arkansas Little Rock, then to Texas Tech, and then in a season and a half to the Texas Longhorns. This is a Texas team, too, that before the firing and before the loss to Illinois, this team got all the way to number 2 in the nation.
Yeah, they're hot.
They were sitting there at 7-0, number 2 in the nation. He had a great team, a team that we all have talked about all season so far, a team that can make the Final Four.
Yeah.
And build a great culture in his season and a half. Crazy it's ending this way. He's finishing his Texas career, and by the way, this is his alma mater too, which makes it even worse in ways. Chris Beard will finish 29-13 as the head coach of the Texas Longhorns. Last year, obviously, they went to the second round and they were exited there. He made the Final Four in 2019, actually were the national runners-up, lost in a great national title game to the eventual champs Virginia Cavaliers in 2019 while he was the head man at Texas Tech. And here's where things get crazy, Peyton, because when Chris Beard came on last summer to be the head coach at Texas, he signed a 7-year, $35 million deal that ran all the way through 2028. Now, with his firing of Just Cause today by the Texas administration, he is $0 out of this of his $21 million buyout. Not only is this a black eye on him, his family, the university, and everything, but it's also hurting his pocketbook because he had a $21 million buyout to go along with the 7-year, $35 million deal that he had signed. And now, because of the firing with Just Cause, Peyton, $0 of that goes to Chris Beard.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. He cost himself not only his job, he cost himself a lot of money. The fact that he got $0 out of that $21 million buyout that he was offered by Texas heading into 2028. You said it's a shame. I wish we could take it all back. Wish it never happened because he was building something special down there at Texas in his alma mater. This is only his second year at Texas, and they were 12-2 coming so far this season. His overall record, I think, was at Texas was like 7 and what was it?
Are you talking about Texas?
Just at Texas.
29-13.
29-13 in overall record. Last year, he made the tournament, had a rough season, got knocked out in the second round. And this year, you mentioned it. He got all the way up to number 2 in the country, defeated Gonzaga by double digits, defeated at the time a top 10 Creighton team in a good game. And not only that, not only was he building something special, the Moody Center was particularly just for him. He wanted a bigger arena. He wanted a bigger atmosphere, and he was going to get it. Moody Center this year is as good as an environment as it's ever been, ever.
And that's a great point, too. He helped personally design the Moody Center.
Yeah.
The Moody Center is in his image. The way the screens are along the wall, the way the environment is, smaller number of people. It only holds like 10,000 people, but that's to create this raucous environment that's loud, where the noise goes up to the ceiling and comes back down and reverberates. That's a great point because Chris Beard has a hand in building the Moody Center in his image to make it a top-tier home court advantage. Peyton, we have this statement released by the University of Texas's Vice President and Athletics Director, Chris Del Conte. It says, the University of Texas has parted ways with Chris Beard. This has been a difficult situation that we've been diligently working through. Today I informed Mr. Beard of our decision to terminate him effective immediately. We thank Coach Rodney Terry for his exemplary leadership both on and off the court at a time where our team needed it the most. We are grateful he will remain the acting head coach for the remainder of the season. We are proud of our student athletes, coaches, and staff who throughout this difficult time have continued to make us be proud to be Longhorns. So that is coming from the Vice President of the University of Texas and the Athletic Director, Chris Del Conte. Peyton, it is just all I can think about is unfortunate, sad ending to a program we have been lauding with Chris Beard, a guy who at Texas Tech we lauded. You mentioned he was on my short list when Cal does leave Kentucky to become the next head coach of Kentucky.
Yep.
So it's a sad ending. Recruiting was rolling. We didn't even mention recruiting.
That's the biggest thing for me. He has he has a number 3 ranked recruiting class coming into next year for Texas. He has 2 top 5 recruits, or 2 5-star recruits from Ron Holland and AJ Johnson. Where would they go? Especially AJ. AJ was looking at Louisville. He was looking at some other teams as well, but he was so settled in Texas, and he loved the environment down there in Texas and what Chris Beard is bringing to the University of Texas, the Longhorns. And now that he's gone, I question whether he's going to ask for his release or not. Because if I am him, not just being a Louisville fan, I'm asking that release immediately.
Well, it'd be very interesting to see what those top-tier recruits do if they bide their time and wait it out, which would probably be the smart thing to see what head coach and how everything falls out. And we've got to talk about the fallout, too. Texas obviously lose the game to Illinois, Chris Beard's last game in charge before everything that occurred. Yeah. His last game at Texas as they lost to Illinois up in Madison Square Garden for the Jimmy V Classic. Since then, they have lost just the other night to Kansas State in the Moody Center.
Yep.
A crazy 116-103 contest. So if you're Texas, where do you go from here? Do you rally around head coach Rodney Terry, a Texas alum, and continue this great season that you have already put the foundation for with the wins over Gonzaga and Creighton and the likes. Or it could go the other way. Does it crumble? So kind of bleak, not necessarily bleak, that's not the right word. The outlook on Texas as we sit here on January 5th with 2 months left to go before the tournament starts. If you were a betting man, how do you think the rest of the season for Texas plays out?
I think right now Texas is sitting 12-2. The conference record is 1-1. They're playing, in my eyes, the best conference in college basketball in the Big 12. Talent-wise, they have the talent to get to the Final Four, I believe. You know, guys like Marcus Carr, Timmy Allen, all the other guys they got, Dylan Mitchell. They got a lot of talent there. They have the talent to go to the Final Four. But the fact that they just lost their head coach, and not to mention, who's the assistant coach? Rodney Terry.
Rodney Terry, yep.
Oh, Terry. His first game coaching was against Rice, and they had to grind it out to beat Rice in his first game.
Went to overtime.
And I'm pretty sure that game was in the Moody Center as well.
Yes, it was. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it was. It was in the Moody Center as well, one of the toughest environments in college basketball. We mentioned it just a minute ago. So if shit goes south, we could be looking at a team that doesn't make the tournament this year because they're playing in the best conference of college basketball, and they're playing teams like Kansas, Texas Tech, Oklahoma team. They got Oklahoma State coming into this week. That's a road game, and Oklahoma State almost just beat Kansas. Oklahoma State's a good team. So they can't afford to lose that game. They need to get their shit figured out, and they need to gel quickly together and use their talent. Because if they don't, could not be making the tournament this year.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be an interesting situation to keep an eye on and see either you rally for each other and for your interim head coach, Rodney Terry, and you continue this good start to the year and keep it going, or things go south. And I think that's really the only two ways. I don't know if this is going to be one of those situations where they win some, lose some, just kind of middle of the road. It's either going to rally and they're going to be one of the best teams in the country still, or they're going to completely fall off the face of the planet and, like you mentioned, be in danger of missing the tournament. It's a very tricky situation. Peyton, before we wrap this up and talk about where Chris Beard goes from here, let's talk about the Texas job. We talk a lot, and a lot of people, one of the biggest talking points in college basketball is what job, how would you rank jobs? Best job, top 5 jobs in America. I think Texas University athletics as a whole, football, basketball, volleyball, softball, as a whole, Texas is a top 5 job in all sports because Texas loves their Longhorns. They love their Longhorns. You have the Longhorn Network.
Yes.
Texas is the richest school in college athletics, right? Because of all this money generated. They have big boosters, big donors with big pockets. Everything's bigger in Texas, right?
Yes.
And they're about to go to the SEC, who is the richest conference in the NCAA. So you have all these factors that I think makes Texas attractive. Plus, you mentioned their basketball profile over the years have been raised. You go back 20-some years ago with the Kevin Durant's, T.J. Ford's, etc., LaMarcus Aldridge, etc., etc.
PJ Tucker.
Lots of great players in a great conference, going to an even greater conference. A lot of positives to take this Texas job.
Yes.
So with it being so highly sought after, let's take a look at potential, in our minds, realistic candidates. If you were the AD of Texas, if you were Chris Del Conte, who would you be on your first choice call list? We have a list of names that we feel like are realistic, and that would be home run hires if you could get either one of these men. Let's start with, to me, the most obvious, the guy who's going to be in most demand because Georgetown's presumably going to be open as well. That has been a shipwreck for a couple years, and it's not any better this year. You would think that they move on from Patrick Ewing, so this guy would be my first call for them as well, plus a whole host of jobs.
Yep.
If I'm Texas and I'm Chris Del Conte, the AD at Texas, I'm calling Rick Pitino. I'm calling Rick Pitino. And I know Slick Rick has said, Iona's my last spot, and I'm happy here. And I do believe that to a degree, but I don't believe that's his last spot because I think he looks at a job like Texas for all the reasons we've mentioned, and this is his final chance at glory. And you don't think that Rick Pitino, with all the money behind him, with all the advantages behind him, plus he gets to go to the SEC. Who's in the SEC?
Kentucky.
With all these advantages at a school like Texas, you don't think Rick Pitino wouldn't thrive and wouldn't love a job like Texas?
I think he would love it, but we got to keep in mind he's 70 years old. How long does he want to keep doing this? I don't believe him saying that Iona is going to be his last job, because I do think he's going to take another job. However, I don't think it's going to be a Power 6 conference school. I see him going down to South Florida and taking that job. The reason he doesn't really like coaching at Iona is because they're in a one big league. South Florida's not in a one big league. They got another conference that's going to get a couple teams in there, so he won't be in a one big league. But if he goes to Texas, they are moving to the SEC. I don't know if he necessarily wants to go play at Kentucky. He hasn't been to Kentucky since I think 2015. 2016 we played Kentucky at Louisville, so it had to have been 2015 his last time in Rupp Arena, and he hasn't been back since there. So I don't know if he really wants to go back to Kentucky and deal with that whole situation again. There's still a lot of Kentucky fans who doesn't forgive him for coming back.
But take the Kentucky part out.
I get it,
Texas
but still,
job, yeah.
I don't know if he wants to be in the SEC conference, to be fair, back in the SEC
But
conference.
what I'm saying, though, if you can get Rick Pitino, you got to call.
If you can get him and he's interested, 100% he's number one call.
You got to call Rick Pitino. I think it's first and foremost, just humble opinion. How about this for another big name? Kind of on the Kentucky point. He's been linked to this job. If he really wants an out, and his buyout clause right now at Kentucky is like $63 million. So he would have to leave it on his own accord. But if he's kind of over the drama and wants a kind of an out, and he can take his recruiting class and instantly turn things around or get things back on track, John Calipari makes a lot of sense at Texas.
100%.
Makes a lot of sense.
Do I see it happening? No. But I think you give him a call because the money isn't an issue. You mentioned the buyout. I mean, that's the only way he's going to leave. That's the only way that you can get Kentucky to fire him is the buyout, but they're not going to do that. It's the only chance Kentucky has of getting rid of Cal if he decides to pack up his stuff and leave. And the only job I see him packing up and leaving for is a job like Texas, where money becomes not an issue. They can pay him a shit ton of money. The pressure is not nearly as amount of a pressure you're going to feel being at Kentucky than you would at Texas.
That's the other thing. The expectations are a little bit low. They'll be high, but a little bit lower. Like, if you can get Texas to Elite Eights and Final Fours, they're happy.
Yes.
As a Kentucky, it's got to be Final Fours and national title. So the expectations are lower. You will get paid just the same amount, if not a little bit more. Texas has more money than Kentucky. I mean, I think that's a great fit if Cal was to bolt. Plus, he's had a history of recruiting the state of Texas very well. Look at the Harrison twins. Look at Julius Randle. Damian Collins. And a lot of great talent from the state of Texas has came up to Kentucky. So I think that's a great one. Peyton, this guy is so in demand. And you look what Providence did last night to UConn. And look what they've done this year and last year. And he's not going to be as far as, like, recruiting end. No, we don't know, because Texas would be a whole different ball game than Providence. But X is no coach. I think Ed Cooley's so in demand for a lot of jobs right now. I would call him.
Yeah, he's on the short list of any job that is available in the country. Put him on that. Hell, if we go back to last year, the whole Louisville situation there, when I was doing my little rant, he was in my top 10 of coaches I wanted to come to Louisville. He's a hell of a coach. He demands. He has high expectations for himself. He wins ball games. And even this year, they didn't start off the year well at Providence, but look what they're doing now. They just beat UConn, a top 5 team. They beat Marquette.
5-0 in the Big East for the first time ever. 5-0 in the Big East. And once again, I think the number 1 team in the Big East and has a chance to go back-to-back. He's a hell of a coach, and I think he needs to be a candidate for this job or any other job that opens up here soon. And again, you give him better resources, better money, better all that. It's untelling what he could do recruiting.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it's remarkable. Ed Cooley's got to be on everybody's short list this year. I mean, he's going to be so in demand. A couple other names, Peyton. I know you don't think this one is likely, and I don't either, because I don't think he's going to leave his alma mater. But keep in mind, this guy a few years back, when the Missouri job opened up before Conzo Martin got it, he was linked and basically had the contract signed before backing out, and he got more money from his alma mater, and he stayed there ever since. Matt Painter. We've said about it all year on the podcast. The dude is super underrated in the realm of Ed Cooley. Matt Painter to Texas is a great fit. Look at Matt Painter's style of defensive-minded but free-flowing offense. What does the Big 12 do anymore? Rely historically on defense, play free-flowing, fun style of offense. Now, recruiting, he's going to get guys that fit his system. It doesn't matter if they're 4 or 5 stars. Will he get some at Texas? Probably more than he does at Purdue. Absolutely, because, again, the resources. But he's going to identify talent like he has at Purdue, develop them. Purdue or Texas would have a great team year in, year out because of the system. They will be tough. You will not out-tough Texas if Matt Painter was there. Matt Painter is a tremendous X's and O coach. I think Matt Painter, if you could steal him away from Purdue, that is a great hire.
If Matt Painter goes to Texas, hypothetically, it's the same boat as we just said about Ed Cooley. He's the recruiting. He'll be able to recruit guys at a high level, but that's not his forte. He's a developer, like Ed Cooley is, and he'd be able to develop guys. Look at Zach Edey. Zach Edey is the best college basketball player in the country. He developed Zach Edey into what he is today. And if you put that type of coach in the SEC conference next year, then it's a crazy situation that's going to happen down there, because SEC I think already has like the best coaches, variety of coaches in the country. You add Matt Painter into there, it just keeps on getting better, and I would love to see it. Don't think it'll happen because I do not see him leaving his alma mater for any job.
Speaking of SEC, real quick, we'll start rapid firing these because we're making this quick. Nate Oates from Alabama. He's been in demand ever since he got to Alabama a few years ago, won the SEC regular season and conference tournament. And he's been in demand. He plays a free, fun-loving style of basketball where they shoot a lot of threes. I think it'd be a great fit in Texas. Thoughts on Nate Oates potentially to Texas?
I love Nate Oates. He has a style that you just want to see. It doesn't matter if you lose the game. I said it last year at Louisville. If we lose a game, I'd rather lose it scoring over 100 points than scoring 50 points. Just score a lot, shoot a lot of threes. I mean, it's a modern day basketball, and I think if he does that at Texas, it could change the whole program for the better. So.
Another coach we think that should be on the short list, Andy Enfield at USC.
Yes.
We've heard his name starting to be rumored about. He's got a great recruiting class coming in, led by our guy Silas Demery next year. But he's not really. He made the Elite Eight a few years ago during the COVID year with USC. He's got a consistent tournament team. He's got his NBA roots. They run an NBA system. So he could bring that NBA style and the good recruiting over to Texas and basically do the same thing. I think he may not be your top tier one, like a guy like Patino, Calipari, Cooley, or whoever, but he would be like 1B. And I think it would be a great fit at Texas.
If you can somehow keep A.J. Johnson and Ron Holland and then bring Silas and Isaiah Collier to Texas, that's a top. They won't beat Kentucky's recruiting class because that's number one. It'd be number two right behind it. It'd be hard to beat that. That'd be incredible.
Yeah, Andy Enfield make a lot of sense. And the other one, this is more of a long shot, probably in the realm of like a Matt Painter or whoever. But it's a name Peyton really loves, and he's a great head coach. He hasn't coached in the college game since leaving Michigan.
Yeah.
But if you needed, and here's the problem with this one, it'd be more of a temporary Band-Aid because he's older. But you're talking about a great X's and O guy. You're going to run great offense, super smart, and that is John Beilein.
He is older, but so is Patino, and he's number one on our list, to be fair. Patino's 70. I don't know how old John Beilein is, but I know he's up there in age. But he's a hell of a coach no matter what, and I think it'd be a great fit down there. If we go back to the last time this job opened up, when we was talking about potential Shaka Smart being on the hot seat, John Beilein was my number one option, and he's still, to this day, when this job opens up, he's my number one option. I think he'd be a great fit. Pit him in the SEC, and let's see how he does. And I guarantee you he does what Rick Barnes did when he moved from the Big 12 to the SEC. Watch him, if it happens, be a top 3 every single season in the SEC conference.
Yeah, and he gets to go to the Big 12 again for a couple years before the ultimate move. Real quick, before we wrap this up, a couple just names, like underneath names that would be like maybe tier 2 that I really love. Andy Kennedy from UAB. I think that could be a lot of fun. He'd be a good fit if you missed on all your top tier guys. How about little Richard Pitino, what he's doing in New Mexico?
I did say on the podcast I don't see him leaving New Mexico, but there is a job that he's going to leave for. The money's just too good, and he has to leave for, and that's Texas. So I think it'd be a great opportunity for him to get back into a Power 6 conference, but I think he's done a hell of a job in New Mexico, and I think he's going to continue to do a hell of a job in New Mexico. But it's a candidate people need to look out for.
And then wrapping this thing up, Peyton, again, super unfortunate. Chris Beard no longer at Texas. The whole deal is just super unfortunate. I never advocate touching females as a man. I'm not going to go down that road, but super unfortunate. The last thing I want to ask you is kind of to summarize. Obviously, Chris Beard's done for a while. I would imagine a few years. But this is this is America, this is a land of second opportunities. People love a good comeback turnaround story. Let's say 3, 4, 5 years has passed and coach wants to get back in the game. Do you see him eventually ever again getting another high major job? Or do you think if he does get to come back and coach down the road, he's basically stuck in the low major, mid major range?
I think if he does come back, because no one else expected Rick Pitino to come back. I know 100% different situation, but you're not comparing the situation that Rick Pitino was in and situation Chris Beard in. I would never do that. But nobody ever thought Rick Pitino would ever come back to college or what happened at Louisville after getting fired. But he did. He's at Iona, and now we're talking about him potentially taking over Texas. It could happen. Do I see Chris Beard coming back and taking over a high major Power 6 conference school or just a high major in that? No, I think that's done. I think that chapter of his career is completely over. But do I see him taking over a low major or mid-major program like Rick Pitino did with Iona? Yes, because I think he's too good of a coach. And if you're a team like Iona and you have the chance to maybe risk it, I'd do it because he's a hell of a coach. He can recruit, he can develop, and he's a student in the game, and he's one of the best coaches in college basketball. Say what you want about him with this whole situation. I take him over a lot of coaches in the game that I would love to have at Louisville. But I think the chapter of him coaching a high major is over. But I do see him coming back and potentially coaching a mid-major or low major.
I think it just all depends. Rightfully so, morally speaking. Like, again, domestic violence is never the answer. Alcohol, whatever. So I think it's going to be a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow. It's always going to follow him. Whether he coaches again or not, it's always going to follow him around. But again, people do love a comeback story. And I'm trying to be very morally correct here because we never condone this, ever. And he should have been fired. But again, people can change. And so I would have to take time and really devoting time to show he's changed and make up for his wrongdoings. Again, don't condone what happened. So I don't want to get anybody twisted and getting hot about this. Do not condone it. He should have been fired.
Yes.
But again, I'm trying to be realistic in the land of America where people do love second chances. So no, in short, I don't think he ever gets a high major again. But I do think in due time, in 4, 5, 6 years, if he is wanting to come back and enough time has passed and he has shown that he has changed and making great strides to change, and genuinely, not just for show, I do think there will be a small team, a mid-major team that needs a head coach desperately that sees the opportunity to bring him back. Again, whether that's right or wrong, that's not what I'm saying. That's not up to me. I'm just giving an honest answer.
One more candidate for you, and I can't believe I didn't think about it. And it could happen, especially the money of Texas could bring him back. Jay Wright.
That's a great one. Jay Wright would be tier 1.
Yeah.
Jay Wright is right there.
He might be number one of Pitino.
Actually, I would probably put him ahead of Pitino. I can't believe I forgot Jay Wright. Jay Wright would be a tremendous fit at Texas. But again, wrapping this up, Chris Beard no longer the head coach at the University of Texas with good reason and fired because of just cause. Again, he finishes, as of today, his career in the college ranks as a head coach. 171-73 overall, 29-13 at his spell at Texas. Does make the Final Four in 2019, becomes national runner-up with Texas Tech. Signed that 7-year, $35 million deal that ran through 2028, but because he was fired with just cause due to all of this, he gets $0 of his $21 million buyout. Stupid mistake, whether on purpose, on accident, or in between. Very costly mistake that has cost Chris Beard his career for the immediate future. Sad situation. Wish we didn't have to talk about it. But now we look to see what happens with the University of Texas program moving forward. And it'll be something that'll be a developing story as the season progresses until things get straightened out. So we hope you guys enjoyed this. Leave your thoughts and comments below in the video in the chat. We will respond when we see them. But until Sunday, until episode 129 of the Everything College Basketball Podcast, we hope you guys have a great rest of your evening, and stay tuned for more updates. See you guys.
See ya.